A couple of weeks ago, I was training for the WCQ, and after testing a bunch of different deck ideas, I settled on the pure Mitsurugi deck, which I felt like played the best into the metagame. Today, I'm going to recap my entire tournament experience. The first thing I thought about Indianapolis is that the city is extremely barren. There were no tall buildings or skyscrapers, and there were barely even people wandering out on the street. I was able to get the entire pure Mitsurugi deck courtesy of MST Tombox, who lent me the deck hand-delivered by MST Nishi. So I spent the entire Thursday playtesting with friends and also other duelists that I found in the hotel lobby. But as I was playing with better players, I quickly realized that the pure Mitsurugi deck had a lot of issues. Not only issues with consistency, but also running into the problem of Drone Lockbird and of course random disruptions like Bystials doing a lot of damage to the deck. And with the deck list due the next morning at 8 AM, I pretty much went to bed uncertain if I wanted to actually play this deck. And so I spent the next couple of hours lying in bed on my iPad looking at all the decks that topped at the Central America WCQ, but I was so tired after a couple of hours that I just gave up. And it was about then I decided I should really play the Yugioh cards in my deck because Detonator is just such a powerful card. But I wasn't a huge fan of the 7 Tachyon version, so I settled upon the Fiendsmith pile that plays basically the pure / Fiendsmith engine, which I was already used to, and just a couple of the Yugioh cards. Well, 5 to be exact, including the Bonfire. The deck could also make usage of Protos, which I was not a huge fan of, but you know what? At that point it was 5 AM, so I just went with the flow, submitted the deck as is, and I decided not to cut anything, landing on a final build with 48 cards in it. Definitely not the most optimized deck build, plus the fact that I've never actually played with the deck, so I'd have to learn it on the fly. After submitting the deck, I spent the entire next day labbing the combos and testing with other duelists in the lobby, finally gaining a little bit of comfort with how the deck plays. And with that, I went to bed prepared for day 1. Pairings go up, and I sit down at my table to see none other than the DB Grinder, literally after I just money matched in his Coliseum too. I win the die roll, and game 1 my hand is pretty mediocre. I normal summon a Lacrima and get hit by a Fuulos. I follow this up with a Naked Prayers, no Tribute, and that gets hit by a Dominus Impulse. So I special summon the X Yugioh and set up a Detonator, giving him a single draw and passing on basically just a Detonator and nothing else. He normal summons Chessy Cat, attempts to draw 2, I respond with Detonator to destroy the body, and then he hits me with a talent, so I'm forced to pop the Detonator. He steals the Lacrima and plays Gold Sark, to which we go to a game 2. Game 2 we get hit by Drone Lockbird, but because we used Mitsurugi Ritual as the first action, we're able to set up Mirakumo with Prayers, as well as a Fiendsmith combo into High Wave King Caesar and a copy of Futsu on the board. He plays into the Caesar negate and then activates a copy of Triple Tactics Thrust into Talons and tries to steal. I think about it for a couple of seconds, but then let him take the Caesar. Now, as risky as this seems, we still have the Futsu plus the Prayers, meaning if he special summons a monster, we can activate Futsu. If it gets negated by Caesar, we still have the Prayers to bring back Mirakumo, and all we really care about is wiping his board. Left with no extenders, he's forced to link off the Dormouse and the Wave King Caesar to go off into SP, and here the Prayers into Mirakumo is enough to go to the next game. Game 3 is really interesting. Both of our hands are really solid, mine especially, with a copy of Fuulos, Impermanence, Nibiru, Phantasme, and Bonfire. And to make things even better, the Fuulos actually resolves. He's forced to set up a Heart Scripter and a set GWC to give me the minimum number of draws while still having adequate disruption. But we Phantasmate to draw into a copy of Harpy's Feather Duster and Habakiri. He then activates Triple Tactics Thrust to set a copy of Dimensional Barrier. Now, all things considered, he set up a pretty respectable end board after 4 hand traps. And that's when I realized there's actually a way we can potentially mind game him. We activate Bonfire to dig for Ice Yugioh. Now, if we get hit by the Drone Lockbird, we can still normal summon Ice and get 2 bodies to link off into our Fiendsmith plays even under Dimensional Barrier. Luckily for us, there's no draw. So next we activate Harpy's Feather Duster, and here's where he has to make a decision. The only contents of our hand that he knows is that lone Ice Yugioh, which can bridge off into an Xyz play. He thinks for a second before flipping Barrier and calling Xyz to cut off the Detonator and a potential Banshee into Protos play. Yes, exactly what we wanted. We go ahead and activate Mitsurugi Ritual, summon out the Habakiri, and try and combo, but he's still able to survive with the Heart Scripter banished. So we're forced to end off with an IP Masquerena plus a Desiree. This way we have a Desiree negate plus the IP Masquerena can link away the Desiree, and then Desiree can send away another body. He draws return, summons a Chessy Cat, which we negate with Desiree, and that prompts a concession, revealing his hand of 3 normal summons. Wow, that was a really close game, and it was the first match of the tournament. Okay, not gonna lie, but after that one, I had to go blow up the Millennium Toilet. But we made it back just in time for round 2. Round 2, we're up against Vanquished Soul. I was honestly a little bit scared of this matchup, but luckily we won the die roll, so we got to go first again. We opened Ice Yugioh with a copy of Ash Blossom, so we were safe from Fuulos. Go ahead and normal summon the Ice, search our deck, and special summon Sword, which was a huge misplay. This is what I mean when you build your deck on the weekend of the event, sometimes you're just not used to how it plays. In any other Yugioh deck, you want to summon out Sword with Ice so you get the X to your hand and you can send a copy of Twins. But in our deck, we only play one copy of Sword, so searching for an X means that's just a dead X that leads to no other monster. So that was a big misplay, but it wasn't the end of the world. We're still able to combo with the Pharaoh Imps into the Habakiri, and then later on in the combo, I make a second mistake by making a Yugioh dual drive and attempting to search when I remembered we also only play one copy of Ice Yugioh. So there's nothing to search, so we passed on a dual drive with 2 materials. But the rest of our board is pretty solid. He has a DD Crow for the Habakiri effect in the graveyard at one point, but we're still able to set up Mirakumo with prayers and an IP Masquerena, so that's more than enough against Vanquish Soul. Game 2, our opponent sets up an okay board with a field spell plus a copy of the Trap, a Rock on the field, and Jiaolong, which attempts to search in our draw phase. But luckily, the card we top deck for turn is Infinite Impermanence, so we chain it directly on the Jiaolong in the draw step, so it's not able to search the missing attribute that he really needs. We go ahead and activate Mitsurugi Ritual, summon out the Mirakumo, and use the effect to wipe. Our opponent chains a Rock, which is a huge misplay because he special summons the Raisin and has no other Vanquish Soul to reveal for neither the field spell or the trap card, which means Mirakumo actually resolves and the game just ends. Really unfortunate misplay there, otherwise I'm pretty sure he would have been very favored to win that game. Round 3 is a bit of a disaster. We get paired against pure Mitsurugi, ironically of all things. I go first and normal summon Ice, get hit with a Dominus Impulse. Unfortunately, the rest of our hand is really bad, so we just have to pass the turn, and he sets up a full Mitsurugi board, and we have nothing on the follow-up. Game 2, we draw our hand. Droll Knockbird, Infinite Impermanence, Pre-Preparation of Rights, Pre-Preparation of Rights, and Mirror of the Mitsurugi. Yeah, the 5th card we literally drew was a card that made our entire hand unplayable. So we pass turn, they do some Habakiri shenanigans, we hit them with a Droll, but we're really unfavored now because they're still able to set up a Mirakumo and we have a bunch of dead cards in our hand, so we lose on the next turn. So yeah, we bricked pretty bad, but honestly, this just happens in a 10+ round tournament. You're inevitably going to break at least 1 or 2 matches, so we take the loss, but mentally we got to focus and win the next rounds. Round 4, our hand is pretty bad and we get hit by a Fulo, so at some point we have to pass with just a Mirakumo and a Prayers. Our opponent's playing Mitsurugi Yugioh and we have basically no defense, so after he clears through the Mirakumo, he basically has game. I was ready to scoop, but I wanted to see if we can get some more information. For example, did the opponent play Yugioh Cross? It's really important sometimes to not scoop early so we get some info. And by some stroke of luck, this actually works out because he tries to play around Nibiru and does not assemble 8,000 damage. So we get a next turn, top deck a Pre-Preparation of Rights for which there's no Ash or Drow, and we're able to play through his board and deal 7,200 damage, putting him at 800. So on his crackback, he has no way to activate prayers to special summon back the Mirakumo. So he scoops. Yeah, I have no idea how we won that, but sometimes, guys, don't scoop early because you can actually win unwinnable games. Game 2 does the full Mitsurugi Yugioh combo and sets like 3 Solemn Judgments, so yeah, nothing much to say there. Game 3, we kind of brick and end on a lone Caesar plus some hand traps, but luckily that's somehow enough because our opponent bricks and we're able to eventually win the game. Round 5 is against a Malice player. Game 1, he sets up a pretty full Malice board, and we almost play through everything. We had a hand full of engine, going through a bunch of Yugioh and Mitsurugi shenanigans, and in this game I actually realized there's actually a way to win going second with this deck specifically against Malice, even if they set up the full combo, and that's by exhausting all of your resources to play through their board and ending on a Protoss as the final push. Protoss Calling Dark means that your opponent just can't play the game on the next turn, so you can constantly Protoss them over and over again. And we get really close. All we have to do is bait out the last MTP disruption so we can assemble a rank 4 Banshee and search for Protoss. I misplay by chaining the Magatama, attempting the ritual summon from my hand, thinking that it would be a cost, but our opponent chains the MTP and banishes the lone food suit that I have on the field that I wanted to tribute. Yeah, it was my first time using that effect, so yeah, reading cards and practicing, it honestly goes a long way. Game 2, we basically get the full combo and he scoops, so we're off to game 3. Game 3 starts and there's only about 8 minutes left on the clock. Now, Malice can gain a lot of life points using GWC, so it's really imperative that we get a turn and we clock him for some damage. Luckily, we're able to Fualos him, so he ends on just a Heart Scriptor plus an MTP and GWC set. Now, our hand isn't that good, but we hard drew Protoss, and that's actually surprisingly good going second against Malice, because again, like we talked about, if you can clear their board, summon out the Protoss a good old-fashioned way, you can still win the game. That's basically what happens. We summon out the Protoss, but our opponent chains the effect of Druisworm in hand, which actually really hurts because Protoss wipes the board and Druisworm sends away the Protoss. So we draw another Charmy, normal summon it, and make a Banshee. Banshee, of course, can also search for the Yugioh cards, which is what we do. We search for Ice and then pass turn. So So on the opponent's turn, they're able to reset the GWC. But this leaves them with 0 defenses, so I draw for turn and have the ice still in hand. We draw for turn, normal summon ice, go for X into sword, and that's when I start panicking, because with only 40 seconds left on the clock, we literally have to do some damage. Our opponent has already gained life off of GWC and dealt some damage over the course of the last turn. The fact that ice already resolves means that our opponent probably doesn't have Dominus Impulse, so we should have just went for King of the Pharaoh Imps and searched Habakiri, but at the time I was panicking, so I decided to make Detonator instead, hoping that we could pop his monsters and then deal the 3k damage through time. Of course, this turns out to be a mistake because he just flips the GWC, goes for Whitebinder, banishes a bunch of bodies, and now we just can't attack. So yeah, if you're short on time, don't panic guys, just try to rationalize and make the logical play, which in this case was making Pharaoh Imps, going for Habakiri, and fetching the full Mitsurugi combo. So it's really unfortunate we're now on the bubble at X2 as early as round 5. We're basically gonna have to win like 7 more rounds to try and have a chance at topping. But that's a part of the game. We can't get tilted. We just have to keep playing one match at a time, one duel by one. Round 6, we play against Mitsurugi Raizio. We go first and full combo him, so he scoops. Game 2, we get the Fua, but he's still able to set up a Detonator plus a Mirakumo, giving us a plethora of draws. In our hand, we have X Raizio, but we also have pre-prep, Habakiri, and Called by the Grave. Now, it might seem obvious to drop the X as the first action, so Aggregator can negate the onboard Mirakumo, but this locks us into XC summoning for the rest of the turn, which we don't want to do in this deck. I realize that this deck can play through a lot of boards, but we have to tap into the Fiendsmith engine and then use the Raizio stuff at the very end. So that's the plan I had, is to go in and try to push for the Fiendsmith stuff, and eventually when our board gets Mirakumo wiped, we can drop the X Raizio and still play with a really strong engine that they didn't expect to see. And that's pretty much what happens. At some point, he Nibiru's the board and then clears the field with Mirakumo, and then we drop the X Raizio, and honestly, the look on my opponent's face, he was so shocked. He's like, where the heck did that come from? So we're able to OTK with Detonator plus Futsu plus Mirakumo. Our opponent did have Droll, but the called by came in clutch. Now, honestly, I think our opponent played really well. Even if you get Fulost in that situation, you probably still set up the full board, because he had Nibiru, Ash, Droll, and then having the Detonator plus Mirakumo, it's like really hard to lose, even if you give your opponent 4 or 5 draws. But I think the way we sequenced it, plus the fact that we drew called by and held it for the Droll specifically, was one of the key factors that we actually won that game. Round 7 rolls around, and we're playing against a 60-card Fiendsmith Mitsurugi pile with the Millennium monsters. It turns out you can make Zombie Vampire or the Photon Galaxy Lord to negate monster effects, and you know, these engines are really powerful. Game 1, he sets up a full board, including a Mirakumo, IP Masquerena, the Photon Guy, DDD Highwave King Caesar, and a Lacrima in the Grave that can special summon back the Requiem and dump the trap. But our hand is really good, and we have a lot of gas. We have the X Raizio plus Called by the Grave and pre-preparation of rights. Start off with X Raizio, Chainlink 1 Aggregator to negate the DDD, Chainlink 2 X to search, which prompts a negation from the Photon Lord. So one X Raizio already dealt with 2 cards on the field, which is insanely powerful. This is exactly the reason that X Raizio should probably be on the limited list. From there, we do basically all the Mitsurugi combos. Luckily, there's no Droll and Lockbird to be seen. Now, we play through everything and set up a copy of Mirakumo, which is being threatened by our opponent's Mirakumo summoned off of the prayers. At this point in our hand, we have 2 cards left, Called by the Grave and Magatama, and our opponent just has the Mirakumo wipe plus the Fiendsmith trap card in the graveyard. So for some genius reason in my head, I felt like Called by was more valued and we wanted to hold it in our hand, so we went ahead and chained Magatama, tributing our own Mirakumo to pop theirs, hoping that we can attack for game. Now remember, our opponent did Millennium shenanigans last turn, so they paid 4,000 life points. So we decide to let the Desiree resolve, and it sends away one of our monsters. But the last card in his hand is none other than Bestial Baldrake, which banishes the Mirakumo, meaning we lose the game on the spot. So yeah, we really should have called by that Desiree, which would have meant we won and played through one of the scariest boards in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Game 2, we don't really draw engine, but we're able to go into DD Highwave King Caesar, have an Ash and a Droll in our hand. Our opponent starts off with a pre-prep, which we promptly Ash, because if you're starting with that card, chances are it's your only play. Luckily for us, it's enough, and on our next turn, we top deck a playable card and are able to close out the game. Game 3, our opponent goes first, draws, looks at his hand, looks at me, and then sets one and passes. Oh no, the 60 card deck finally bricked. We draw and activate Harpy's Feather Duster, wiping away the Called by the Grave, and we have Habakiri plus Mitsurugi Ritual in our hand, which means we're able to play through every single hand trap as long as we're able to sequence it correctly. We'll go ahead and start Mitsurugi Ritual, summoning out the Habakiri. This way you play around Droll and Lockbird, because the first search that we're going to be doing is the effect of Habakiri to bring itself back, and by that point we'll have the Mirakumo on the field, so when our opponent drolls us, we can just chain so they're forced to discard a card. We pass with Dynamundo and IP Masquerena, and that's enough to close out the duel. And honestly, this guy was super chill to play against. He was just down to earth, we were chatting, making jokes between the duel, and even though he lost on the bubble and he was out of the tournament, he was still really cool with it. Round 8, we queue up against a pretty serious player. He sat down, we didn't really make small talk, we just high rolled. Luckily, I won the die roll. We go first, he has no hand traps, we set up the full board plus Detonator, DDD Highwave King Caesar, and of course Protoss Calling Dark, he draws and scoops. Game 2, we start off with a Perulia. He fires off a Habakiri, to which we Ash the Saji. They normal summon a copy of Orcus Symbol Skeleton, to which we draw a card for Perulia. And yeah, now at this point we see they're playing Mitsurugi Orcust, and obviously they didn't draw very well because they're normal summoning a Symbol Skeleton under Perulia. And yeah, we just happen to draw Bestial Magnemut off of the Perulia, which is an insane draw here. They go Link 1 and ditch a copy of the Nightmare, searching for the field spell. Now, if they weren't under Perulia, it'd be better to search for the Crown so they can play around the Bestial, but of course, Perulia being in the mix, you go for the field spell here, which is the correct play. He activates the field spell, we chain the Magnemut, banishing the Nightmare, and they don't have any defenses, so we're able to OTK. A little unfortunate that the match went the way it did, but, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Does have high variance, and sometimes this type of thing happens. You either draw bad or you get blown out, you don't have any non-engine. But that brings us to the last round of day 1. If we win this, we're able to make day 2, have 3 more rounds, but more importantly, we also get a copy of the booster pack prize promotion for day 2, which has some, well, pretty random cards. Round 9 starts, I ask our opponent for the deck count, they say 40 cards, so I'm like, okay, another Malice player. We win the die roll, basically full combo. We open Sanct and they use the Ash on the Requiem, to which I assume they just can't play through Caesar, so that's valid. So I bring in the Lancias, the Phantasmes, and basically every single piece of Malice hate, only for them to activate a copy of Habakiri, and I look at my hand and like, oh, I guess we missided. But more importantly, how the heck did they fit Mitsurugi Raizio into 40 cards? They full combo Ouroboros loop us for multiple cards, and we just scoop. Game 3, we set up a full combo. Our opponent only has an Ash again, unfortunately. We're setting up Detonator plus the Mitsurugi shenanigans, and we have Solemn Warning to back it out. He goes Mitsurugi Ritual, to which we warning, and he reveals his hand, which is pretty subpar. And yeah, honestly, I felt pretty bad. It was the last round of day 1, and our opponent was really chill. Even after the match, he wasn't super upset. He was happy. We were chatting, we were vibing. Surprisingly, all of my opponents on day 1 were really friendly. Like, no one was trying to rule shark me, no one was upset or anything. And with that, day 1 came to a close near midnight, so we quickly went back to the hotel room and got some sleep in preparation for the next day. I also signed a lot of cards across the weekend, which is kind of cool, including a QCR alternate artwork effect failure. This one kind of hurt because it's like a $100 card, but it was still really cool nonetheless. I wake up for day 2, have a quick snack, and then head over to the venue in time for round 10, which starts at 9 a.m. And I see that I'm seated at the VIP table against Aditya Durap, who was the previous NAWCQ champion from the last year. So yeah, this is going to be a bit of a challenge. I win the die roll and start off with X Raizio, which isn't always the best starter in this deck because it means you're locked out of your Fiendsmith plays, but sometimes you just have to go with the flow. He tells me his deck is 40 cards, so I assume he's playing Malice. He doesn't seem to have any hand traps, so I go King of the Pharaoh Imps into the faux Habakiri combo, and go for the Protoss lock Calling Dark. Except he chains the Bestial Druisworm in his hand, the same thing that happened earlier in the Swiss tournament, which means after the chain resolves, he's able to clear the Protoss. Now, the unfortunate thing about this is that we actually get cut off from our Mirakumo on his turn, and because we started off with X into Pharaoh Imps into the Banshee, it means we didn't have enough Raizio monsters to stick a Detonator on the field, so we had no disruptions. I pass my turn and he normal summons a Dormouse, banishes a March Hare to add it back to his hand. We top deck a Night Sword Serpent, which we shuffled back for Nemesis Flag on the previous turn, which is not exactly the best draw. In our hand, we have a bunch of normal summons, including Aramasa, Night Sword Serpent, and Lacrima. The fourth card is Sword Raizio, which we searched on the prior turn, so we start with Lacrima trying to go off into Fiendsmith plays to threaten DDD Caesar before summoning Sword Raizio. But upon the resolution of Lacrima, he chains Baldric, which deals with the lone X Raizio that we had in the grave, meaning Sword Raizio can no longer special summon itself. So yeah, wow, he literally had the perfect hand to deal with everything that we threw at him. Our Fiendsmith play is kind of awkward now because he has a Baldric we have to deal with, meaning there's no way to make a high wave King Caesar, so we actually lose this game. Kind of crazy. I did not think we were losing this one. Game 2, we're able to super combo, starting off with Mitsurugi Ritual, so it plays around Droll, so he scoops. Game 3 is a bit bizarre. We start off with Perulia, and he has one of those hands where he has to give us 2 draws. He activates Baldric in hand after normal summoning, and we draw into Lancia, deliberating whether we should drop it on the effective Baldric or draw one more card off of Perulia. We decide to draw as many cards as possible in case he has Droll Lockbird, so we allow the Baldric, and he makes Red Ransom into the field spell, which we chain Lancia. So now his field is Red Ransom, Baldric, and a copy of GWC set. He also plays Talons to look at our hand and rips away the copy of Protoss that might have given him some trouble. We draw for turn and top deck, and unfortunately our hand isn't that great into Droll and Lockbird. We activate pre-prep, adding Mirror and Habakiri, and he hits us with a Droll. And here's where I misplay because I verbally check with him that Baldric can banish banish ritual monsters, to which he replies a little bit shocked, reads his own Baldrake, and then says yes it can. This was a huge misplay because after the duel I asked him and he literally admitted to not knowing that Baldrake could banish ritual monsters, so if we actually activated Mitsurugi Ritual first action, we would have had an extra body and won the game. But because he was now aware that Baldrake could banish rituals, I decided to start off with X, sending a copy of Aggregator to negate Baldrake. But this is a huge misplay because we're under Drone Lockbird, which means that we're not able to make Detonator, so locking ourselves into rank 4s means that we can't put up any single disruptions. We're able to clear the board with our ritual monsters, but not setting up a DDD High Wave King Caesar means that on the following turn he's able to freely play and we can't do anything. So that effectively ends our NAWCQ run with an X-free record. But overall I had a lot of fun, especially for picking up a deck literally the day of and learning it from round 1 and onwards. And I hung out with my friends, we had some amazing food, I picked up some cool cards, I took some cool pictures with cool cosplayers, I met some Yu-Gi-Oh celebrities and fellow Yu-Gi YouTubers, I picked up some awesome Yu-Gi-Oh swag, I met so many of you guys in person, which was absolutely amazing, just signing cards and seeing so many fans of the channel come up to me and say hi. And I'm honestly super humbled that you guys take the time to watch my content. Oh yeah, and I did get a day 2 promo pack from which I pulled the literal worst card ever. Guys, do not open your packs. So I still consider the event a great success, because at the end of the day, having fun is what really matters. I mean, it's just a children's card game after all. But I think the moral of the story is make sure you're testing a good deck to begin with, and don't fly to an event being on the fence of which deck you want to play. Moving forward, I think I'm definitely going to play the better deck from the get-go.